What's up, guys, and welcome to another Hungover podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Julien, alongside
Yvonne.
Yes, and just a little housekeeping here. This is a topical podcast, obviously. You might have just tuned into it due to the topic at hand. The polarization of internet, voices, I'd say. The general internet, in general, I guess. But you can indeed find this podcast on iTunes, SoundCloud, and in video form on YouTube. And we would appreciate a thumbs up on the YouTube video, or God damn that ice cream truck. Fucking shit. It comes around as soon as God damn it. Or you can review this podcast and give us
too much ice cream truck.
A motherfucking 1 star for the ice cream truck. But we'll take any review we can get on iTunes. That would be really great if you could help us out with our visibility. Of course, Yvonne, we start this podcast out every week asking each other about ice cream, and also what sorts of media have you been consuming, whether it be books, movies, TV shows, video games, and also what did you drink last night? I know we recorded a podcast very recently. Some would say it was recorded yesterday.
Some might say.
Some might say. Go ahead and check that out. It came out last week. Of course, this podcast comes out every Monday at 9 a.m. So yeah, Yvonne, if you have anything new to share with me, please do so now or forever hold your peace.
All right, thanks. So later tonight, in terms of media that I'm going to check out, I'm going to watch the movie Patterson, and that is an intriguing Adam Driver doing his whole dramatic actor thing, so a little bit of a change from his now main role as Star Wars, but previously it was known more for Girls, so it's a return to form, I think, for Adam Driver, who loves to engage with a wide range of his acting ability. So I'm excited for that. It's on the recommendations of one of my best friends, so I assume it will be great, and I've enjoyed the trailer.
Awesome.
I have also consumed a whole lot of the NBA free agency period. So
Okay.
It opened up Friday with a lot of movement, and I mean the NBA has been changing dramatically recently, as some of the podcasters, longtime listeners might know. I am intrigued and interested in all things NBA, so I've been paying attention.
Why is the NBA changing?
There was a huge trade where Chris Paul, who's one of the best point guards of his generation, really great point guard, was traded to Houston. Then Paul George, another really important piece, was traded from the Indiana Pacers to the Thunder, which no one was expecting, or at least none of the people that I listen to regularly were even considering or talking about that kind of a trade. So it's kind of shaken up the landscape of the NBA a little bit. Still not strong enough, I think, to challenge the Warriors, but we'll see what happens as we move on. We still got a few key players left to go and decide where they're going, but it's pretty interesting so far. And the Spurs kept their Australian Patty Mills, and
that's the best player.
No, he's he's great. He's a 3-point shooting master, offensive player, and
that's cool.
I really enjoy him in this when the Spurs have commercials for the local grocery store, H-E-B.
Oh, okay. I think I've seen that grocery store. I feel like we passed by one.
You should check out these commercials. They're pretty damn funny.
The grocery stores in San Antonio. That's cool, actually.
Yeah. So a lot of the major players come out to be part of it, and because well, the Spurs were previously the most international team in the NBA. So they have
in terms of their players.
Yeah. So Patty Mills is an Australian. Then they had a guy from Tony Parker is French, and Manu Ginobili is from Argentina, And of course, the main guy, Tim Duncan, is from is in a Caribbean island, but he doesn't really have a strong Caribbean accent. And so it was just an intriguing collection of personalities, and they performed really well. And these commercials are super funny, so I enjoyed them.
Oh, that's cool.
Today, after playing 2 hours or like an hour and a half of really intense 7-on-7 soccer where my team never had subs, so I was playing the whole time.
Nice.
And for a fat guy like me, it's difficult to do that all the time. Especially when the competition isn't all other fat guys. It's like
well,
youthful...
you're not doing it all the time, are you?
No, I don't exercise as consistently as I need to. You can go back and check out our podcast on exercising when I just run the half marathon. Now we have a completely different I have a completely different exercise regime. So I'm not in shape enough to be able to do that really, really well. So that was a challenge. But after that, I got to go celebrate my sister's birthday at the Empire Farm Brewery. So there's a place in Syracuse called Empire Brewery. We've had a few of their beers before. And they have a farm where they do kind of a different style of menu and different things. So I got to have
in the city?
It's outside the city. It's about 20 minutes, half an hour outside the city.
Okay, that's awesome.
In a small town called Cazenovia.
Oh, I think I've passed by it. I think. Sounds familiar. Sounds very familiar to me.
The city or the place?
The place. Not the...
Because I don't think the place has been around that long, but maybe it has. In any case...
Oh, wait. That's not a town?
Cazenovia is a town, yeah.
Oh, okay.
I was talking about the Empire Farm
I meant
Brewery.
the town. Sorry, not the Empire Farm Brewery. Sorry.
So I had a Skinny Atlas beer there, which is one of my favorite beers. It's just a nice light summer beer.
Pilsner?
It's a Kolsch ale.
Oh, those are also very nice for summer.
And then we went from there to a winery.
Whoa, big moves.
Yeah, it's called the Quora Winery, and we had some sort of red that was as sweet as most whites.
That's interesting.
It was a real sweet red. And then I think it was a Chardonnay that they had there, which was better than the red, but not my favorite wines I've had of all time. But the intriguing thing was not the alcohol or the food we consumed, including BBQ pork nachos, which had maybe half an ounce of BBQ pork. It stormed super hard. It was in central New York.
Storming here also, actually, today.
So while we were, I don't know how bad it was out there. Was it bad?
Not that bad. No, I mean it was like showers, but they were pretty heavy.
So while we were out there, we were sitting outside on the porch because it was a fairly cool day. A little humid because it had been raining all day, but fairly cool by the time we were out there. And then we were looking on our phones trying to see the weather map, and we see, it's going to hit us. But we'll miss most of it, but there's this big chunk that'll hit around where we were. So we're like, okay, we'll survive. So we were sitting there for a long time. You know, there's a lot of food, so we're working through that. We're going through, a few people got like the beer samplers, so they had like 6 different beers there,
nice.
Small ones, but they're working through all of those, trying to do the tasting notes or whatever. And then the main storm hits, and it's just
beautiful.
It is a wall of water. And
Happy
then
birthday.
The wind starts whipping up. So we were sitting under a covered tent, pretty close to like the entrance. So it's like, here is the exit, like out from under the tent to like where the yard is or whatever.
Yeah.
Here is the entrance. We were like here.
And for these audio listeners, Yvonne is doing some hand waving over here. So you need to check this video out on YouTube.
Yeah, let's say it was about 20 yards, maybe less, maybe about 15 yards between the entrance to the end of the tent. and the wind whipped up the rain so hard that anyone who was left out there, even that close to that far away from the edge, was going to be drenched. So everybody rushes inside, and then it gets even more intense with the rain. The poor waitresses and waiters had to rush outside and collect everything that was out there. I think it flipped a couple chairs that were in the backyard, and then the power went out.
Really? Wow.
So in this entire restaurant, the power goes out, and of course the guy goes, "Free beer!"
Really?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
But there were like 75, 100 people there.
That's crazy.
And
that's a lot of people.
The power goes out, and they've got a kitchen in there because they make food. But as someone in our group pointed out, the power going out didn't take out the gas stoves that they were working with.
Right,
but
the pilot light should still be on.
But it took out the vents. So then the smoke wasn't being pulled to the outside, so the fire alarm started going off.
That's awesome.
So we're waiting in there for like the rain to die down. And we see how just dramatic it is. Like immediately there's standing water everywhere, and we're on a hill. So we're at the top of the hill, and we see standing water everywhere that isn't on the patio. It's like this much standing water. It's like 1.5 inches for audio listeners. And eventually the rain dies down, so we leave. We're going to go to the winery. Now, this is usually a trip that should take about 10 minutes.
Yes.
So, and the cell phone service had been knocked out, but luckily by the time we started leaving, the towers had kicked in again or whatever, so there was some service. So I was like, I'm going to follow my sister, but I'm just going to put this place into my GPS just in case. Right. And it was really good that I did. Because all the power at the stoplights was knocked out. So there's as you aren't a driver, I'll explain this to you. When there's no power in the stoplight, you treat it as a stop sign. So you stop,
that
and
makes
then
sense.
It's like everyone goes in clockwise order.
Yeah, it's a four-way stop.
Yeah, so
intersection.
We start going down the path, and then we get about maybe 1.25 miles, 1.5 miles down this small road, and I see ahead people are turning around. I'm like, I wonder if there's just like standing water or something. There were 2 trees that had fallen across the road and blocked it off completely.
Jesus Christ, man.
Okay. So we have like 3 cars in our caravan. We turn around, and there's a bunch of cars. There are at least 10 cars behind me by the time I turn around. So then we try and go down another side street to cut around where that log was, and that street was cut off.
Oh my God.
And then when we went back to the main street through Kaz, there are no big trees anywhere, so it was clear. But I lost my sister because she and I got separated at the main traffic light.
Right.
So when I got into the center of town, there was electricity working, so all the traffic lights were working, and I chose this larger side street that I saw.
Uh-huh.
So I start going down it, and I'm like, okay, I'm trying to follow the GPS. I'm on top of this hill, so I think, okay, if I stay on top of the hill, water works kind of like anything else where it looks to run down from the hill, so I won't be caught in the flood, right? I mean, this is how groundwater works. It's
water finds the lowest point.
Exactly.
Yes.
So I'm driving along this hill, and I'm thinking this in my head, and as soon as I do this, I crest this little hill, and it's water that I'm not kidding you, it's like 3 to 4 inches thick of water on the ground. It was the most solid bit of water that I've ever seen. And of course,
so weird.
Opposite traffic is a a mail truck.
Oh God.
A postal service truck.
No.
So the SUV in front of me, which is, it's an SUV, it's got good clearance. It makes the run through. So I'm trying to follow it to match the bow wave. But on the opposite direction is the postal service truck. So the post truck is doing its own bow wave, so I'm really afraid that my intake valve is going to get flooded. I'm afraid my car is just going to shut down.
Destroyed.
I'm stranded in this I make it through there.
Orange.
I keep
water.
going. There's a power line down across the road, so I have to turn around again, try to go down another side street,
Man.
This side street is at the bottom of the hill. Or this side street goes down the hill, so I'm like, oh, shoot. So I make it to the bottom of the hill, and there's, again, like 2 to 3 inches of standing water. So I have to try and navigate my car. There's this, like, little bit of land that's on the oncoming side of traffic that I have to kind of like loop my car around to go like the opposite way that I'm trying. I jog left and then jog right to get back onto the top of the road, and I make it through, and from there it was clear except for a few big puddles of water where I was like, okay, if my car gets swept into this lake that's like 10 feet away from me, what am I going to do? It was pretty intense, but I made it to the winery.
Drive.
Yeah, and we all made it to the winery within like 3 to 4 minutes of each other, which is pretty intense. Okay. Even though we all took different kind of paths, or I took a different path than anybody else did. And I saw like a tree that had fallen through a house, and other people saw trees that had fallen on cars. It was crazy.
Holy shit! What do you do in that sort of situation? You just have to. Do you have storm insurance? At that point?
Presumably home insurance should cover acts of God.
Okay, except in Florida or where was New Orleans, I assume.
Well, flooding is a different insurance. So flooding is a national insurance versus a lot of like home insurances won't cover flooding, but they'll cover a tree falling through. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So at least, well, I mean, aside from your house getting completely wrecked, possibly. At least you get the money back.
Yeah,
sort of.
There is that.
Sort of.
So that was my eventful and stressful drive, and that's why... So on top of not getting a lot of sleep, a lot of soccer, no coffee today until like an hour ago.
Oh, man.
I'm
Life is rough.
Exceedingly tired. I had a headache, and I was super stressed, and then adrenaline coursed through my veins.
Well, I mean, on my side, I certainly didn't have such an eventful day at all. Well, I played a lot of Tekken today, actually Tekken 7. Well, not a lot. I played like an hour. I'm rising ranks. I'm now a second Dan for you Tekken players out there who clearly listen to this podcast. That would be weird. But thanks for playing Tekken. I am sort of making my way out of beginner rankings, basically. And I guess that means I'm getting slightly better. Nice. So that makes me really happy. And I also played some Overwatch, which made me very depressed because we lost.
On PC or on...
I was playing on PC because I care... Well, my rank is higher on PS4, so I don't want to screw it up as much. But then again, I don't know if you solo queue, are you more likely to... rise ranks, or are you less likely? I don't know. I guess it depends on how your team plays.
Obviously. I didn't do well when I solo queued the last time.
Right. I mean, I'm playing on PC to grind out the skins, I guess. I don't fucking know. It's just a change of pace, I guess. But yeah, that's basically it. I haven't really. I mean, again, we recorded the podcast yesterday, so I haven't really done much since then. But Tekken 7. Check that game out if you're looking for a fighting game. Even if you're a casual fighting game player, I think this is a really great package. You can get it on PC, Xbox One, PS4. It's also in arcades in Japan, which is really cool.
Oh, that's cool.
There's no more arcades in America. Actually, there's one in Chicago that's supposed to be really cool. If you're in the Chicago area or passing through, check out Galloping Ghost.
Isn't there Barcade in New York?
Yeah, there's Barcade, but this is just an arcade. Barcade, okay, so Barcade is all right. Barcade is cool. They have a lot of actually pretty good beers, and I'm talking about Barcade in New York City. They have some pretty good beers there, pretty good beer selection, that is. But of course, it's kind of dark. I mean, arcades are usually kind of dark anyways, but the Barcade
It's so
believe
that
it's
humans can't tell what time it is outside, so they have no idea how much time they've spent in there.
Exactly.
It's like a grocery store, which is super light. You're just wandering around going, I know I came in here for something. Was it almonds?
Oh, man. Hell if I know. The game, anyways, the game selection is all right at Barcade. There are actually, I think, 3 locations in New York for Barcade. The game selection's all right. Again, it's a bar in New York, so it doesn't have that much room. So they can only have so many game cabinets. But of course, people get really drunk there, and so they wreck the machines. So it's just not it's not the most well upkept arcade as you can imagine. So that I don't like that, because these cabinets cost a lot of money, and they're relics of another age. Some of them are actually antiques. Like, they have Donkey Kong in there. That's something that should be preserved, I think, in terms of video gaming. But I think it's called Galloping Ghost Arcade. I need to look up that. I'll post in the description below. This arcade, I looked up, they have 550 games. It's a huge arcade, apparently. I saw a YouTube video of a guy going to it. It's huge, but the coolest thing about it is it's a $20 day pass. So all the games are free after you pay the $20 to entrance. So I think that's a really cool deal.
580 plus arcade games.
580, sorry. And they have all the fighting games you could ever want there, which is super freaking awesome. I think a lot of arcades lived and died by their fighting game community around the games that they had. So, because fighting games are obviously the most competitive games that you can really have in a 1v1 situation, I think.
You have clearly not played competitive pinball, my friend.
Exactly. Well, pinball machines do exist, and this arcade does have them, so go check them out. Anyways, enough about games. I
forgot to say, I tried out this small game that I don't know if a lot of people have heard about. It's called GTA 5. I think it stands for Grand Theft Auto 5. I did try that out.
5th edition. Oh.
Yeah,
cool.
It's okay.
It's Grand Theft Auto.
Aiming is horrendous.
Rough.
I don't know how people play this game.
It's rough. But you should check us out on YouTube. We will be doing a Let's Play of that game very soon, I hope. Perhaps not. Maybe it'll come out in a couple weeks. But yeah. What else did I had a drink, an interesting drink my girlfriend saw online called an Adios Motherfucker. Oh my God.
I was at a spit take.
She made it, and she looked it up. She followed the recipe, so I don't blame her for making a bad drink. But but let me tell you, this is the kind of drink that you get when you're trying to get really fucked up at the bar, and you're like, oh my God, I'm a person that really wants to have a sweet drink, basically. And so it has all the alcohols. I don't know. It's like gin, no bourbon, sorry. Gin, vodka, all the clear alcohols anyways. Rum, gin, vodka, rum, basically. Let's go with that. And then it has this
Aquavit?
It's triple sec, but it's blue. What is this liquor?
Curacao.
Curacao. That's it.
Curacao. Blue Curacao.
I don't know. I never know how to pronounce the CAO.
I feel like I'm trying to make it like a Kira Kurosawa, and I don't know that that's necessarily
it's
correct.
Kurosawa, and it seems like a very, I don't know. And then it's topped off with Sprite, I guess, or 7-Up. So the Curacao is, or whatever you call it, is made from oranges, I think, but it's got blue coloring in it. It's like triple sec, but it's got blue food dye in it, I think. Maybe it's made differently. But yeah, so that's sweet on top of the sugar from the Sprite. I don't like mixing sodas with alcohol. It's just not for me. But I understand a lot of
Keep
people
my
like
alcohol
this stuff.
pure.
So go check this drink out if you're into sweet drinks. That is for you guys, not for me though. Anyways, Yvonne,
Yo.
some people on the internet might have actually just gotten mad at me because I said that I did not like something.
Could you believe it?
Could you believe it that you could voice your opinion on the internet through text and say whatever you want, and people will sometimes agree with you, and it will end up being a minority of people that end up destroying someone's career, perhaps. Maybe. I don't know. Politically, or maybe they're just comedians. Maybe they just said something just slipped out of their mouth accidentally. What do you... Curacao.
Sorry.
Maybe you just got mad at me because I pronounced it Curacao when it's Curacao. I don't know. Anyways, Yvonne, we've moved to the topic of the show because we have run out of things to talk about otherwise. The topic of the show is sort of long-winded here. Let me take you on a journey. The internet. We have Twitter. We have any fan site forum. We have Facebook. Yvonne, there are a lot of places where people congregate to shout into a void, some would say, and voice their opinions behind a sort of anonymity. And I'd say that is pretty annoying to me. I think that I mean, we've seen it more recently. I'd say. I think obviously this has been going on since the dawn of the internet, since people could type things on a forum in relative anonymity behind the screen of their computer. But really, I think we've seen this more in the mainstream. I'd say even connected to Donald Trump's presidency. I think that's I mean, aside from that, a lot of the news stories coming up surrounding his presidency have become very mainstream and talked about a lot, and a lot of people jump on and get very angry at certain things that he says with reason, of course. But also, I mean, some of the things that he says are not... Oh, well, I don't know. I mean, it's just... It's a clusterfuck, Yvonne. It's a clusterfuck.
Yeah.
So I don't even really know where to begin with this. Even though it's my topic. I wanted to talk about really just sort of the culture behind getting very, very angry at just the minute things that people say that are in the public-facing people, not necessarily politicians. I think that we can be more critical of politicians, even on the internet. But I think even just actors and actresses, I think most recently, the one I can think of was Stephen Colbert, right? He was on, not really trial, but under investigation, whether or not he had a joke in one of his monologues. I don't know if you saw it or heard about this.
Probably not.
But he said, I don't know, he paraphrasing loosely, he said basically Trump is like sucking Putin's dick. I don't know. Like he, and I think, yeah, even though you're kind of laughing, right? And you're kind of laughing, right? Because that's kind of funny. I don't know. It's a joke, right? He's a comedian. He's not a news reporter. He runs the Late Show, right? And so people were petitioning to get him fired because he said that. And so that's the sort of thing I want to start talking about. If you have anything to say about situations such as this, as he sent me a link.
I sent you a link, which is a pretty interesting link. It's how the internet talks. So it's a
since the launch of Reddit.
Yeah, it's a compilation of basically all of the comments that have been posted on Reddit from, I think the data they choose is from 2007 to the end of 2016.
Okay, that's almost 10 years of data. That is a lot of data.
Right. So you can push in a whole bunch of different words that you want to rate. It works a lot like the Google search term engine. So
Uh-huh.
you can see how often they're used. And that's pretty interesting because the original way that the original words they chose were things like social justice warrior, triggered, things like that. So snowflake,
Right.
the terminology that we hear used a lot in terms of the rhetoric that has emerged and the rise of this very strange conservative talk radio dialogue, which has infiltrated the majority of our language. So partially, the other partial, so the super liberal stuff is triggered and whatever, because it was always like, oh, when you use that word, it's triggering me, and I even put on a voice there, because it is super annoying to me in terms of how that reflects, and I think that the internet as a tool, a medium for speaking, with the anonymity and different things, grants a wide range of its ability to either antagonize or to post truths, different ways of talking about things. But I think when you get down to it, like Stephen Colbert's joke, as much as it might not value the office of the president or whatever,
Right.
it's still, I think it's a pretty funny joke. But then you get people like Kathy Griffin calling what she did in terms of her joke, and not thinking that it was, a lot of people not thinking that it was all that funny, in terms of...
I remember this.
Yeah, or even if you look at the media postings from recently where people have called for Trump to be assassinated, including people like, I think, Johnny Depp, who did that. So it's and that wasn't on the internet. That was in a rally or something or other.
Uh-huh.
So it's just, I think the internet is a reflection of what's happening in the rest of the society, but to an exaggerated scale based on that level of anonymity. So we have an increasingly polarized society. I think a lot of that has to do with the crisis of capital, which occurred in 2008, and the basis of polarizing the people tremendously along lines of those things. So the capitalist class is working its magic to divide the working class as much as possible. So we have initially in the reflection of 2008, right? We had Occupy Wall Street and different organizations that were fighting against the 1%, right? It changed the way that we speak.
Right.
But then soon after, we had the co-optation of those grassroots campaigns to things like the Tea Party. So the Koch brothers, who funded the Tea Party, looked at the boisterousness of the working class and really wanted to capitalize on a certain type of identity politic, right? The white working class politic, and they wanted to push that agenda. So that has been increasingly directing in polarization, and we've seen a lot of that reflected in the emergence of both Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump. I think Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump are two sides of the same coin. So it's really the push of people who have been really affected by the changing economy, the lack of jobs, the way that immigration might have affected the work in their eyes, or that's the rhetoric that they're hearing, especially from the capitalist class, this conservative talk radio stuff, like Rush Limbaugh saying, or Ann Coulter saying that immigrants are stealing American jobs, when nobody's talking about the robot invasion of jobs.
Yeah.
That we've covered in a different podcast, so you can go check that out when we talked about the singularity. So I think that a lot of what we're pointing out and what you're talking about, and a lot of what the zeitgeist of the moment is that the polarization post 2008, which has really, 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 really affected the population in ways that we're not talking about basically crisis. Capitalism can't be in crisis. This is the idea that capitalism will solve all problems and that we have emerged from the 2008 crisis better than ever. Housing prices are again reaching another peak. We have continuous growth, job growth, etc. The economy is getting back on track. But really what we're not doing is looking at the underlying symptoms, and we're covering those up with different ways of manipulating markets, manipulating the economy, not being really in a pattern of sustainable growth for the working class people. And so we have this push in different directions. And Bernie Sanders, we had those people who said, okay, I've been left out in the cold. I need the government to help and support me. The government takes my money. The government should be working for us. It's a government of the people, by the people, for the people. Whereas the conservative movement that reflected with Trump is like the government should be working for the certain group of people that aren't debilitating to the society. And I think that has worked in a lot to this rhetoric. And then from that immense debate, we get things like Triggered and Snowflake and whatever, the social justice warrior and bullshit like that. And then we get reflections of like Stephen Colbert should be taken off of the Tonight Show and different things like that. And I've gone on a rant for way too long here to answer the question that I think you posed. But
well, yeah. So I mean, you're saying that this sort of polarization that you see on the internet is way more deep rooted in our political system. And I totally agree with that.
I think it's more than that. I think that the political system is a reflection of the economic situation.
Right, which is sort of like a cycle, I'd say. I feel like it is. I mean, the political system affects the economic system, which affects the politics of all our politicians, the stances that they take. In order to fix the economy, but then it doesn't really work out, so they have to change it. So I think it's a mess, right? So
I mean, this is a much deeper topic for a different podcast in terms of that loop, and I would interject and say that isn't quite the way it works, in my opinion. But we'll leave that besides. There's a distinct link between economic power and people who seek out to further their economic goals and the political system. We'll leave it there, and then they split. They attempt to split people based on that.
Right. Well, I mean, that's what you just did was an example of what I want people to do. Right. So, I mean, we could have went on and had a conversation about that and your differing opinion, right? Mm. So the thing is, on the internet, right, or I guess generally, you have to be so careful in what you say now. You have to be so politically correct or incorrect, I guess. It depends which way you're thinking about it. But what I'm trying to say, no one's open to having a conversation on the internet at all. They just want to shout out and say their opinion and have it heard, even though it's not really heard. It's sort of just to your followers or to the people that subscribe to you, and then sometimes it can gain some traction. But the point is, you're right. The huge polarization, right? If I can't say anything that disagrees with your opinions, or else you're just gonna jump on me and beat me to death through words on the internet, of course.
Yeah, but the crazy thing is that it doesn't have to be over anything as tremendously impactful as the president or our political system.
Right.
Like exactly. I'm a fan of Rooster Teeth, for instance. Right.
Yes.
I often go to the Rooster Teeth website to watch their videos. If there's a single comment which has criticism for their product, for the video,
yes,
it will get bombarded with negative comments and negative karma, basically, like the Reddit system. It's a crazy thing. Right. It's just like this rabid population of people who, and sometimes they're valid criticisms like the editing or the kind of banter or whatever, but there's just this zeal to come to the defense of people who are making lots of money and don't give a shit about you. It's the friend simulator complex there, but in other places across the internet it'll be a similar thing for different reasons. And I find it spectacularly insane that literally something that won't affect your life at all, this comment criticizing the quality of a video, will be attacked by so many people. It's crazy to me that something that inconsequential can cause that kind of vitriol.
Right, and I mean, I'm a fan of Rooster Teeth as well. I'm a fan of Kinda Funny as well. And Greg Miller always talks. I mean, they've had many conversations on this topic, I think. And whenever he talks about this anecdotally, he'll bring up usually if he gets a mean Twitter comment or a mean comment on a video, sometimes he'll go into the comments and call that person out and say, and tell them why anything. I mean, they'll criticize what they were doing, and then he'll say, oh, well, it was really because of this, and this. And then the person, he always uses, I don't know if this is every single time, but it seems to me like that it is every single time, because of the way he says it. He says that, the person will say, oh, I'm so sorry, I didn't know you would respond. I'm so sorry I said any of this. I didn't mean it to come off as a mean way, even though obviously you did. That's why you typed it that way. So, I mean, you typed, I want you to die, or something like ridiculous. It goes to that point consistently. Or actually, I think, isn't the thing is you can tie anything back to, like, if you go through a thread long enough, you'll eventually get to Hitler in the topic, right? Something like that. But yeah, so that's the craziest thing. I mean, frequently YouTubers get death threats. This is not a uncommon thing. They get death threats in the comment section, and I mean, obviously those will get flagged and deleted, but that consistently happens just because they made a video, or just because they voiced their opinion in a video or a vlog or something, which is so insane to me that you would just you would never ever say that to their face. I think that it's because you can hide behind your screen and you're just typing away and you just want to make them feel bad. I think it's really you would never say that to their face, one, and then it's really the thing that I really hate is that they're just trying to just sort of see someone fall. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. That is really just so mean-spirited. I mean, what do they do to you? Literally, what did they do to you? As you said, this shouldn't affect you at all. Just don't watch the video, right?
I think that the other thing about that is that it can be about getting your voice heard, and there's a lot to say about a negative voice getting more attention than a positive voice. For instance, again, going back to those Rooster Teeth comments, it's like 100 comments, 99 of them will be like, oh my god, this is the funniest thing I've ever seen, blah 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 blah. And
which are great.
It's intriguing because I think that community in particular is looking to get validated by those people, right? So they're leaving those kinds of comments. But then you get to other sections of the internet in which negative comments, I find this especially prevalent in like gaming.
It is. That's because it is.
Just being on So for the first
they're
time...
all memes.
They're all memes. But for the first time ever, was it yesterday or the day before, we were playing Overwatch, and two people were openly using the N-word within the discussion.
Right, of course. And that's just how they were... He didn't even hesitate, right? No. He just openly said it.
It was the first thing that he was saying.
I don't know. Right, yeah, that's just how he addressed us. He just addressed us that way. And whether or not they were black, which I mean, I don't know. that's not my place to say anything about that. But it's just I think, to me, it's just a hateful word, I think.
Yeah, and from the way that they were speaking, not to say that I can guess this for 100%, but from the way that they were talking, they were not.
Yes.
And it's just that. And then I made a comment. I said, that's not cool, or whatever. Like, I know you're just trying to get a rise out of people, or whatever. You're trying to provoke a reaction, but it's still not a cool thing to do, and it's really whatever. And so, because he got a reaction from me, even though I was very calm, I was speaking as I was just now.
Yes,
He kept doing it to see if I could get pushed further and further, and then another guy joined in and made sure to double down on this thing. So at some point it became less useful to bring it up, but it's still like, I'm not a social justice warrior or whatever. I believe in social justice as a concept. I believe that the arc of the universe bends towards justice, but it's just like the anonymity.
We're all good people.
Like the protection of anonymity, and the it's like, and I fell victim to this too, because I've used the word, the F word for the slur for gay men before, right?
Oh yeah, sure.
So
I mean, we all grew up in a time where that was okay to say. I mean, I don't want to say okay. Obviously, you should never say it in that way. But yeah, we grew up as gamers, and in the early 2000s, it was socially acceptable for gamers to use that terminology.
Right, and then
it's obviously not anymore.
Even younger than that, I would use the word gay as a negative thing, right? That's so gay or whatever, to be a negative connotation. So I've gone through soul searching and don't use them, but like I use that word not that long ago. I used that very recently when I was in moderately recently when I was in college, and we went to Turkey, and there was nobody around who really understood the context of that word. I could just say it amongst my friends, and there was like this sweet deliciousness. It's this crazy feeling. It is. That's the only way to describe it for myself. It's this like sweet deliciousness of breaking the taboo.
I see.
It's like drinking a really good chocolate shake, you know?
A chocolate shake. I see, yeah. Something is really bad for you.
Right? Yeah. And every single time I said it,
like,
and I said
bacon.
It a few times, not like every day, 100 times a day. I said it like maybe 2 handfuls of times. But it was this like, I get to... I get to use this word that I shouldn't be using. I know I shouldn't be using, and there's a deliciousness to that, and I understand that as a concept. But people need to rise above that, and figure out different ways of doing that. If that's the real problem, then how about using the word like, "Hey, let's be a communist country." That's a bad thing to say, right? Like,
right.
Say
now you're gonna get a lot of comments.
I'm not saying that we should. I'm just saying use a terminology that has more positivity linked to it, and the taboo of that. Like, hey, let's talk about the taboo of mental health and say, hey, people have depression. Maybe that is something that can be sweet and delicious. But there's the wanting to say something that is vitriolic, hurtful, and taboo. That is such a there's a release of like dopamine.
Serotonin, because you never get to do that in everyday life. You don't get to flip someone. I mean, you can. Plenty of people actually do, but the average person doesn't get to do that every day. So, and then maybe you're having a tough time at home and this and that, and I don't want to get into the nitty gritty here. I mean, you could be having a tough time. Maybe you just ended up taking it out on this YouTuber. But then you would probably realize that you're probably wrong to do that. I mean, this person just put out their work, and they're just trying to make a living or something, right? And you can end up being part of the wave that just sort of destroys all of that because they said one thing that was out of line that they probably that I don't know, this just randomly, I guess not randomly but anecdotally, I guess people sometimes slip up and say things that they shouldn't say, so just accidentally, because their job is to talk all the time, right? Podcasters, that's their job. We're using the example of just YouTube and general things, right, on the internet. But yeah, when your job is to talk all day, 5 days a week, you end up slipping up, right? That's just gonna happen eventually. Hopefully we don't end up doing that. But no one watches our videos, so we're lucky in that respect. But yeah,
I agree with you, and I agree with you. So Dave Chappelle just recently released those 2 Netflix specials.
Haven't seen them yet. I want to see them.
But one of them really, really delves deeply into the concept of the social justice warrior and different things. Like he tells this comedic story about, actually, he was telling a joke. He had a set in Syracuse.
Oh, that's cool.
And
he's on tour now, I guess, right?
I'm not positive.
He's going to MSG in August.
Oh, that's cool. We should. You should go check him out.
My friend is going. I think they're sold out.
They would be. But so he tells the story, and he's talking, and then he makes some joke of some measure, and then it might have been a joke about like the idea. So a lot of his comedy is based around the in terms of the identity politics stuff. It's based around the, like, who suffers most, the suffering Olympics, and then doing different things like that. So that's a lot of what this new set is about. And in Syracuse, this woman yelled out, "Women suffer too! Women suffer too!" And she rushed the stage. And
oh wow, that's scary.
He was like, yes, women suffer, but she was a white woman, and the joke that he gets is like, I understand that women suffer, but you were part of the heist. It's not our fault that you didn't like your share of the cut. You know?
Damn.
So that's a paraphrase of what he was saying, but a lot of what he's getting into is, like, there's no need to compete between each other as much as it is that we need to respect the battles for injustice, or the battles for justice against injustice, whatever that phrasing is, and have that survive. And there's a lot of negative comments that are like whatever for the internet, but there are a lot of negative comments like attack, like liberal people attacking liberals for making mistakes that way too.
Exactly right. So
it's in this similar vein. It's like you can't vote for.
Can't say anything anymore.
Right.
It's essential.
There was the line of thought that, like, if I can't vote for Bernie Sanders, then I'm never going to vote for Hillary Clinton because she's just as bad as Donald Trump. And
right. That's the crazy things that people say. Right.
And yeah, so it's like this or there are worse ones than that, just like attacking people on the left who are very progressive in a lot of stances, but attacking them for making simple small mistakes. It's just this ridiculousness. So there's, like, what I feel is like liberals will attack liberals for not being progressive enough, but conservatives will never really have that central witch hunt on the same wavelength. But because conservatives will then again attack liberals. But maybe it's just because I'm feeding into the same rhetoric all the time. And on my Facebook feed, I'm getting the same levels of like echo chamber, which has been one of the things that I think that we can say that it's not just like comments and things like that, but it's the echo chamber of what we're seeing in social media. So if we tend to gravitate towards the same kinds of people as us, for instance.
Yeah, we have a general group of friends. We have similar friends, right?
Yeah, what does your Facebook feed look like?
It's a combination. I've liked a The only thing I go to Facebook for is actually posts from this website called sureyoucan.com because they tell me all the fighting game news. But and also I go to Facebook to see. I don't know. I mean, this maybe is a topic for another time. But I go to Facebook to see updates on certain people's lives. I like to know what my friends are up to, and to get invites to parties or something like that, or a show that my friends are gonna put on, or something like that, an event that would get us together. And then interstitially, I obviously see all these crazy stories like, Trump is doing this, Trump is doing that. It's essentially a lot. Trump is now enacting his healthcare plan, which is going to ruin our lives, and which is, I don't know, I have to do more reading on it, but so I can't make a statement on it.
But that's probably true.
But no, I am not saying that's not true. I'm pretty certain it's true. But I haven't read the act. I don't know for sure. But you see all these things like that, and then I also see cute animal videos and, again, food porn, which we covered again in our podcast. We've covered so many topics. You have a wealth of things to listen to if you're looking for more podcasts to listen to. Go check us out. But, yeah, so Vaughn...
Julien, I have a couple more questions for you.
Yeah. Oh, good.
So I've spoken a lot, so I want to give you the floor. My opinion is pretty well known at this point. But one thing that I ask of you is, like, is there a way to address what we're talking about?
I was literally about to ask you that. That's funny. Yeah. So let's see. I mean, like I gave the anecdote, Greg Miller just explains it calmly to the person. I mean, he probably just picked one person out of a lot of them, and maybe he was lucky that person came around. But yeah, so you really have to just either you ignore it completely, or you have to just sort of, and then you ignore it completely and just sort of pay it forward, put positivity out there on the internet. I think that is something that you could say it's a vocal minority that speaks on Twitter and on YouTube comments, hateful YouTube comments rather, and that not too many, and then it's a silent majority that, oh, I watched this video, I really liked it, I didn't even leave a comment. You got that many more views. So, I mean, you can see in the number of comments and then the number of views, they usually don't correlate at all. Or they're usually not the same number, rather. There's usually way more views than comments. So you could, and of course, the ice cream truck comes back. But yeah, so there's a silent majority out there that probably really likes the video or is indifferent to your video, or maybe didn't even like the video but didn't care enough to try to take you down, right, in the comment section. So what do you do about it? I really don't know. I think you have to go about your day and try to seek out. You have to try to get both sides of the story, right?
Do you think there's a responsibility for the silent majority to address the vocal minority?
Well, then you have to get into the situation where it's a similar situation, right? It's just a bunch of people jumping on. I guess you could say they're being social justice warrior. You're sort of fanning the flames at that point, right? Because that's what they want you to do. They want you to strike back. That they want you to try to defend yourself, but then you end up getting in a situation like, I hate to say it, like Donald Trump, right? You can hate on him all you want, but he's the president, and there's nothing you can really do about it. And plenty of people hated on him for his entire campaign, called him out on all these sorts of things. He's lying, he's doing all this. He fucking won the presidency. So at that point, you are just fanning the flames. So I think I'd say, again, I've never been in the situation, so I don't know how I would personally act. That's a very good question. I would probably try to ignore it, but I know it's very hard to ignore someone that is trying to take you down, pretty much. You have to defend yourself. I understand that sort of mentality. You have to defend yourself, but you have to do it in it's very difficult to do so on the internet. I'll leave it at that. I think. I honestly don't know what I would do. What would you do, Yvonne? If we get some hate comments in the comment section below?
Well, I think.
Or what do you think?
Well,
we
for
should do
like,
as a society?
I think as a society, when you see an injustice, you need to attempt to correct it as best you can.
Right. I do agree with that.
So like when we had those guys who were using the N-word.
Yeah,
like
I was mostly silent. I was just trying to win.
Right.
And then you addressed it. So
I tried to be as diplomatic as possible.
Of course.
And
I think it was fine.
Try to understand what they were doing and why they were doing it, but to say that it's still not great because that word has a connotation which they're willfully ignoring in order to get attention.
Yes.
And so I think that it's the responsibility of all good people to make sure that in the face of like simple things like that you address it. And if it leads to the point where like another person joins in and then, you know, it's just like their attention seeking behaviors accelerate in that fashion, like I don't think that that's worth it in order to get into a debate, because they're not going to change their minds in that moment. But there are different mechanisms, like if there's a bad YouTube comment, flag it, report it, do that sort of thing. Like there are different methods that I think that we have to address these things in a way that is like, yeah. Now if it's like a middle ground thing where it's like somebody calling somebody a snowflake or saying, oh, I'm so triggered right now, I think that is just like a space in which you're just like,
leave it.
I'm out.
Yeah, just leave it.
I don't think those are important enough terms to get into a fight about. I think that there's a lot to be said about people wasting a lot of energy getting into fights about different aspects, especially about like identity politics, where you're like a liberal attacking a liberal. Or yes, like a progressive attacking another progressive in like such a minuscule and minor way that we should work towards correcting these things, right? But we need to think of all of these things, if you're a liberal, on how they fit into the broad spectrum of things that we want to accomplish. So if somebody says ladies and gentlemen instead of saying whatever you prefer them to say when they're opening up a statement, it's like instead of like my fellow Americans or whatever, like, yeah, we can correct them or nudge them slightly, but like that's in the grand scheme of justice. Like the Republican healthcare bill, which is going to take away protections for women's healthcare and reproductive rights, way more important than addressing the words ladies and gentlemen. Now I can understand if you feel that is an important thing to address, but there are ways to communicate that, and we should have levels of understanding of how people are coming along, you know? It's a slow building process, and we should make sure that we prioritize what's the most important thing to fight for. Like, things that are directly affecting the health and well-being of people might take a little bit more precedence to addressing basic word usage. But there are simple other things, like I'm a TA, or I was a TA.
Yeah.
And when I was a TA, I made it a note that we don't know what pronouns people prefer to use, so we're going to just use each other's names.
That's really awesome.
Right? It's a really simple correction, a really simple statement that shows what position I have on the subject, And it also kind of helps to create a community that knows each other a little better. So we can use each other's names. Okay, and that gets, over the course of like 13 weeks, you get to know everybody in that class's name. You know, it makes it a better and more productive conversation. That's what we're trying to have to begin with. Because I had discussion sessions that were, sections that were really discussing intense topics. So that was like a small thing that you can do that's, you know, that's out of the internet realm, but I think that it's important. And
well, again, I think you see it more on the internet, and aside from that guy who got punched at the rally, do you remember that?
Yeah.
But I mean, there you'll see those pop up. But I think people are a lot less willing to offend someone to their face.
Yeah,
I think
I think that there's a lot of that, and then unless you get a group of people that you can do that, like the Westboro Baptist Church.
Yeah, unless you can hide behind someone else, right? Because
or as a collective.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. So it's, I mean, keep going with your story.
No, the other thing that I think is interesting that also helps to combat it on the internet in particular is the Real ID system that like people like Blizzard were going to implement. I don't know if they did, or the company was going to implement. I don't know if they did.
Do I have your email address now?
But so instead of it would have your name, your username, but your actual name as well.
Yeah. That alone is enough to, that sort of like cuts it in half. There's still be people that are willing to tarnish their name, rather. But so I mean,
that's a dangerous way to go down, though. If we have the entire internet is a Real ID system, right? So that no matter what website you're on, they like every website is connected to Facebook, and every post you make is connected to your name.
Well, I think they're slowly edging towards that. You have to opt in now. I don't know about later, Elon.
If that happens, I'm going to quit the internet.
Account.
I swear.
Well, your Facebook account will still exist, unfortunately.
That's true.
So Yvonne, I think I really agree with you. I think there are certain things that you do have to address, like those two guys that were talking to us on Overwatch on PS4. Sony, you think crossplay is going to ruin your community already? Just look at these two guys. Come on.
Yeah, and let me report them.
You can. Well, if you have their username, you can report them. We can report them if you want. But or we can go back. I don't remember their names, so we can't report them anymore.
I might have recorded
though. Did we win? If we won,
no, we drew.
We probably did. Oh, okay. Well, anyways, I really do agree with you. I'm sorry I didn't help you out with addressing their
I think in that situation you handled yourself
choice
well,
of words.
because I think they would have just engaged more, you know.
Right, if there were two people not shouting at them, of course we want to say you weren't shouting at them. You were just trying to get them to see a different side of the story. I think that's really the problem here. I think no one is open to conversation anymore, especially the media. They want to jump on a topic and put out their headline so they get clicks. Some media outlets, obviously.
But also alternatively, then you have media outlets which bring on two people with completely opposing ideas, and they're not having a conversation. They're throwing bullet points at each other.
Right, exactly. And it's kind of crazy. So I think as a society, we need to be more open to conversation, especially if we want to get anything done. We need to work together, obviously. So we need to find a middle ground, and I think that is the words of wisdom for me.
You know what we can all find middle ground on, though? We can all agree that we would enjoy if people really started doing.
What is this?
Submitting their own music.
Yes! of course, we end our podcast every week. Of course, I want to say, if you have anything to tell us or open up a conversation, perhaps, please tell us in the comments section below, and contact us on Twitter. I think Twitter is, I mean, we can talk more on Twitter, but I think Twitter is probably part of the problem because you have to boil everything down to 140 characters. But we will obviously respond. You can tweet at us at GamingHungover. We also have an email address at it's gaminghungover@gmail.com. Contact us there. We are always open to continue the conversation of the topic of the day, or anything else you want to talk about. If you have a topic that you want to submit, that you want to hear us talk about, please tell us that too.
Word.
But Yvonne, like I said, we always end our podcast in a song in a segment called Hungover Radio. This is your chance to send in your music, whether you produced, wrote, played an instrument on, or maybe your friend did any of those did any of those parts on their song. This is sort of like free advertisement for you. You can send it in to gaminghungover@gmail.com. Hopefully you send an MP3 link, or just get in contact us in all the other ways. You can check us in the description section below. But yeah, that's our whole spiel. We only put it in the audio portion of the podcast. So if you want the song and you're watching the video, I will post a link to it in the description below. Today's song, of course, no one submitted a song again. Luckily, we don't have a very rabid group of people hating on us in the comment section below. So I get to pick whatever song I want. The song is from actually a game called Ni no Kuni: Wrath of the White Witch. I love this game to death. It was on PlayStation 3. It was a Japanese RPG. Yvonne, you, I think, would like this game, or at least the art style. They worked with Studio Ghibli.
Oh, that's
on this game.
Okay.
Yeah, this game is really freaking awesome. So it looks like a Studio Ghibli movie, the entire game. And they're making a second one coming out this year on PS4. Super excited for that. And this game is sort of almost like Pokemon in the battle system, because you sort of capture these monsters, or you persuade them to be on your team, and you fight with them, and they can level up and evolve, essentially. So I think go check that game out if you have PS3 and you haven't played it and you like JRPGs. I highly suggest it. Today we're playing basically, I think it's the title song. It's called Ni no Kuni. That's the title of the song.
Nailed it.
It's the main theme of the game, and I think it's really well written. So it's sort of also they must have worked with the Studio Ghibli music person, the Studio Ghibli music studio as well, because the music in this game absolutely matches. You could play their music from the game in their movies. I think it would work out pretty well.
That's cool.
So yeah, thanks so much for coming out, guys, and listening to this podcast. I hope you guys are more open to conversation in the future. And I'm one of your hosts, Julien, alongside
Yvonne. Thank you so much for coming out and listening to us.
Yeah.
Take care,
goodbye.
everyone. Bye.